That night, the music dissolved into crystal glasses and practiced smiles, as if the whole world had forgotten that behind every elegant dress lies a human being trying to hide something. I, for one, hid it well. The knot of my tie tightened my pride, but I smiled. I smiled because she was beautiful. I smiled because I loved her. I smiled because, until that moment, I believed she loved me too. My eyes followed her amidst golden lights and graceful steps, as if she were the only thing worthwhile in that entire sophisticated party, until that strange man appeared beside her, and he wasn't just any man. He had an aggressively confident presence, as if he already knew exactly what he was about to do. The conversation between them was low, intimate, as if the world around them were an inconvenient distraction. And then he kissed her. There was no hesitation, no shame, no respect. Just unfiltered desire, raw selfishness. And worst of all, she kissed him back. Without hesitation, without even looking around, without remembering me. Without remembering the life that awaited her outside. The room froze. The lights, the applause, the sound of the orchestra, everything disappeared into a silent void where only betrayal existed. I walked toward them, one step at a time, as the crowd parted as if anticipating the storm. They broke away from the kiss as naturally as someone ordering a drink. And it was there, in front of everyone, that I spoke, without raising my voice, but with each syllable weighing like a sentence, "Feel free to continue, since respect has stayed at home." And I turned. There were no shouts, no scandal. Only a dense, suffocating silence, laden with judgment. Every eye in the room followed me, but I looked at no one. I simply walked, unsure of where to, but certain that nothing there belonged to me anymore. It was the end. And not the dramatic kind of soap opera ending. It was the real end. The end that closes doors from within. The end that leaves no room for doubt. In the days that followed, she tried to reach me. First with short, hesitant messages. Then with long audio messages, full of justifications, pleas for forgiveness, desperate attempts to reclaim what she herself had burned. I heard it all, just once. And it all sounded like a distant, irrelevant echo. No argument could erase what everyone saw. The kiss was the least of her problems. What really hurt was the absence of doubt in her eyes. She wanted this. She chose it. And the second she did, she lost me. There was no going back. Not for me. The man disappeared soon after. Disappeared as he had appeared, like a mistake. She discovered he didn't want commitment. Never had. Maybe she felt special for a moment. Maybe she believed the sweet lie of a new touch, of a forbidden charm. But charm doesn't last. And when the charm faded, what was left? Silence. Guilt. Shame. Alone, she stared at the emptiness of her own choice. The bed, once warm, turned cold. Her friends began to drift away. Her routine lost color. And she, who had always had everything, now had almost nothing. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding myself. Not as someone seeking revenge, but as someone surviving. I learned to brew my own coffee without remembering her scent. I learned to listen to our songs without feeling the lump in my throat. And, little by little, I learned to smile again. I met someone. It didn't come like a hurricane. It was like a light breeze. Someone who laughed sincerely. Who looked me in the eye. Who didn't make me afraid to be me. Someone who hid nothing. Didn't lie. Didn't run away. Just stayed. It was a silent but complete love. No empty promises, just presence. Months later, she reappeared. Welcome to the channel. Here, we do not romanticize betrayal, we expose it. All the stories are fictional, but they carry a harsh truth: betrayal destroys, corrodes and leaves marks that not even time can erase. Our goal is to show the real consequences of selfish choices and how they affect entire lives. Prepare yourself. You are about to hear a shocking, intense and unforgettable story. Let the story begin. Michael had always been a discreet man. Not in the shy or quiet sense, but in the kind of presence that imposes itself without fanfare, with a firm gaze and a serene posture. He was the kind of person who listens more than speaks, who prefers gestures to promises, and who carries in silence a dignity that few can maintain even on difficult days. He worked as a financial consultant and lived with his feet on the ground, without ostentation, but also without hiding. His world was balanced, and his life organized within the confines of a routine that brought him security and peace. Nothing about him screamed intensity, but everything about him was whole, true, constant. When he met Emily, it was as if a new color had been added to his everyday life. She had light, movement, and brilliance. She entered places as if carrying summer on her skin, with an easy smile but a deep gaze that always seemed to conceal a universe. Emily was an engaging woman, the kind who commands attention even when she doesn't want it. She had a promising career in marketing at a publishing house and prided herself on her independence. She always knew what she wanted and, even more importantly, what she didn't want. For years, she prioritized her career and freedom, refusing to settle for less than she felt she deserved, until she met someone who didn't compete with her brilliance, but who completed it. With Michael, she found a foundation. It wasn't about losing control, but about trusting him. It was the first time that love didn't feel like a prison, but like a home. And that, for her, was both terrifying and wonderful. Their relationship began without great promise, but quickly deepened. In less than a year, they were living together and making plans that, for both of them, felt natural. There was no exaggeration. Just desire. Friends said they balanced each other perfectly, he, rational and calm, she, intuitive and intense. They admired each other quietly and respected each other in their daily lives. It wasn't a cinematic love, full of public declarations or extravagant gestures, but it was solid, comfortable, secure. And that, often, is more powerful than unbridled passion. In the early years, their life together was built with admirable ease. Dinners cooked together in the apartment's small kitchen, series they watched while lying on the cramped sofa, Sundays spent in shared silence, where each other's company was enough. Every little routine was a ritual of love. There was no rush to get married, no absurd demands, just the constant desire to be there, for each other. Emily, despite her free spirit, found in Michael the tranquility she always sought and never knew she needed. He, in turn, felt in her every gesture a reaffirmation that he had made the right choice. She was everything he wanted, vibrant, intelligent, affectionate. And, above all, trustworthy. The trust between them was something built with time and care. It wasn't a verbal agreement, but a silent understanding that they were together, that they were enough, that everything there was real. And it was on this foundation that they built their lives. Their apartment was on a quiet street, surrounded by trees and small cafes. It was a home built by both of them, with every detail chosen by both of them. The walls weren't luxurious, but they were rich with history. Travel photos, paintings bought at flea markets, mementos of important dates, all arranged by Emily with an almost ceremonial care. Michael took care of the bills, maintenance, and repairs, while she tended to the home, the atmosphere, and the spirit of the house. It was a genuine partnership. There were arguments, as in any true relationship, but there was never a lack of respect. There was never yelling, nor slammed doors. Only disagreements that were resolved with conversation and maturity. Michael was always good with words when needed. Not to manipulate, but to soothe, to clarify, to care. Emily, in turn, brought an emotional intensity to the relationship that sometimes challenged him, but also taught him to feel more deeply. He made her breathe. She made him pulse. Their closest friends envied their closeness. And there were reasons. They supported each other through everything. Through job changes, through difficult days, through moments when the world seemed to be falling apart. Their relationship was a kind of refuge. It wasn't perfect, but it was solid. Over time, they began planning longer trips, perhaps a new home, and yes, in lighter conversations, even children. There was no pressure. Everything came naturally. They worked well. In public, they were discreet, but it was easy to sense the genuine affection there. Not the kind you shout, but the kind you feel. Michael admired Emily with a quiet devotion. He noticed the details. The way she bit her lip when she was focused. The way her mood changed subtly throughout the day. The way she crossed her arms when she felt insecure, even when she said otherwise. And he loved all of it. Every part of her. Because, deep down, she was his home. Emily loved him too. She said it with words, with gestures, with touches. But as time passed, something in her began to change. Little things. A delay here, a distraction there. Michael noticed, but didn't judge. He attributed it to fatigue, work, routine. He trusted her, that was the point. There was no room for doubt because, until then, she had never given him any reason to. He was the kind of man who preferred to trust until the end, even if it cost him dearly later. Emily seemed more distant at times, but also more needy at others. It was as if she were caught between two states of mind. Sometimes, she sought his presence with desperate intensity. At other times, she sank into inexplicable silences. Michael tried to understand. He gave her space. He gave her affection. He gave her everything. He never demanded more of her than she could give. He never demanded more than was necessary. He was simply there. Present. Constant. At this stage, the relationship was still strong, but it was clearly undergoing subtle transformations. Like any long-term love, the two faced the natural passage of time. Surprises became rare, gestures became more automatic, but there was still tenderness. There was still love. And more than that, there was history. And when you have history, there's something to fight for. Michael believed this. So when the invitation to the gala came, an important occasion for her social circle, he was thrilled. It was a chance to reconnect, to break out of the routine, to see her shine and be by her side in that glow. Emily, on the other hand, seemed less excited than expected, but she accepted. Perhaps out of commitment, perhaps out of necessity. No one knew for sure. Michael, however, was determined to make that event a new, beautiful memory. A new milestone. He suspected nothing, didn't anticipate a storm. He simply believed it was another opportunity to show that it was still worth the journey together. On the night of the event, he watched her get ready with admiration. The way she applied lipstick in front of the mirror, the delicate click of her heels echoing through the room, the scent of the perfume she wore only on special occasions. Michael smiled from afar, as if recognizing how lucky he was. That woman still gave him butterflies, even after so many years. And that, for him, was enough. He complimented her, of course, as he always did whenever she dressed with care. She smiled, but there was something different about that smile. Something he couldn't name. But he ignored it. Because love blinds even the most attentive of hearts. That night, everything seemed to be heading toward another ordinary celebration. Dancing, toasts, social conversation, promises of reunions with old friends. Michael watched it all with the lightness of someone who was exactly where he wanted to be, by her side. And she? Emily seemed present, but not entirely. Her eyes wandered more than usual. Her laughter was more restrained. Her gestures, more calculated. As if something was struggling inside her. But even so, she pulled him closer in occasional moments, as if asking, without words, for him to stay. And he, of course, complied. With a touch on her waist, a kiss on her hand, a joke whispered in her ear. He loved her, and love, sometimes, is about blind surrender. It's about trusting beyond belief. And Michael was exactly that kind of man. The party felt like one of those nights you can't forget. The one you believe you'll remember in the end is further proof that it was all worth it. But fate, or choices, has a cruel way of turning pages without warning. And life, no matter how predictable it seems, always finds a way to surprise even those who love with all their hearts. What Michael didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that that night would change everything. That Emily's eyes were no longer so fixed on him. That the emptiness she carried hid more than he imagined. And that the story they'd written together, as beautiful as it was already being rewritten, unbeknownst to those who believed in it most. That night seemed to replay in his mind like a movie he'd never asked to watch. The ballroom, the applause, the kiss, everything blended into clipped images, soundless, just the dry impact of a scene that would never fade. Michael didn't remember the way to the car, nor the faces of the people around him, only the cold he felt when he left that place and realized that, inside him, something had been ripped away forever. The following days came heavy, slow, full of questions he didn't ask because he already knew there was no answer that would change what had happened. Emily tried, of course. She tried to explain herself, tried to fill the silence with words that felt useless, but nothing erased the image. And it wasn't just the kiss, it was the fact that she allowed it, in front of everyone, as if respect had become irrelevant. He didn't scream, he didn't beg, he didn't insult her. He simply walked away. And the void that remained was greater than any revenge could fill. In the days that followed, she reached out to him several times. Sometimes by text, sometimes at his door, her eyes red and her voice trembling. Michael didn't hate her. Hatred required energy, and he had none left to spare. He simply wanted peace, and peace was something she could no longer offer. So he let her speak. She said it was a mistake, that she didn't know what she was doing, that she was confused, that she was lost. He simply listened, without responding. Until one day, he looked at her calmly and said something she never expected to hear, not in a tone of anger, but of realization: "You didn't just destroy what we had. You destroyed what I believed about you." That sentence was the final straw she refused to accept. Time passed. Enough for the pain to turn into memory, and memory into learning. Michael started over. Slowly but surely. He returned to his routine, his friends, his laughter. He went out again, started breathing, saw the world without the weight of the past. That's how he met someone new, someone who made him feel again, but without the fear his previous love had left. With this new woman, things weren't as intense as before, they were simple, and precisely because of that, true. There were no broken promises, no doubts, no secrets. Just the lightness of two weary hearts that decided not to complicate what is natural. She made him laugh, and he allowed himself to be light. It was as if life had finally found a way to reward him. Emily, on the other hand, sank deeper and deeper into the loneliness she'd created. At first, she believed that time would make Michael forgive her, that his love, so patient, so strong, would endure. But as the months passed, his silence became the worst punishment. Seeing that he didn't hate her, but also no longer loved her, was unbearable. She tried to move on, to go out, to meet new people, but everything felt empty. No look made her feel the way he did. No voice had the same calm and firm tone. She had traded something immense for something that didn't even last a week. And now, the echo of that decision haunted her. People moved away, the gaze of acquaintances weighed heavily, and even the mirror had become an enemy. Memories came in waves, the laughter in the kitchen, the shared coffee in the mornings, the plans for the future, everything she had thrown away on a foolish impulse. It was after long months of absence that she decided to write. Not a text message, but a letter, written by hand, as if the effort of each word could bridge the time and distance she herself created. She wrote during the early hours of the morning, tears staining the paper, confessing regrets she'd never had the courage to say out loud. She spoke of the longing, the guilt, the emptiness that had consumed her since that day. She told him she still loved him, even if he didn't believe it, even if it was too late. She asked for forgiveness, not to get back together, but to let him know that her love, however flawed, still existed. She sealed the envelope with trembling hands and sent it the next morning, with a heavy heart and a fragile, almost childlike hope that he would understand. Michael received the letter a few days later. He recognized the handwriting immediately, and for a moment considered leaving it unopened. The envelope sat on the table for hours, untouched, like a ghost from the past waiting to be exorcised. He watched it from afar, not daring to touch it. When he finally picked it up, he felt neither anger nor curiosity, just an old weariness. He opened it slowly, read the first line, and then stopped. He took a deep breath. He carefully folded the paper again and placed it back in the envelope. He took a pen, wrote his name on the back, and, just below, a single sentence, "I prefer to keep the good memories as they were." And sent it back, without further ado. When Emily received the envelope again, her stomach lurched. The weight of it was almost physical. She opened it hurriedly, believing she would find something different inside, perhaps a glimmer of hope, a word that would give rise to hope. But she found only the letter itself, carefully returned, intact. No tear stains, no trace of reading, just that dry, devastating note. It was like a silent punch, the most painful of all, because it came not from anger, but from indifference. He didn't hate, he didn't despise, he didn't hold a grudge, he had simply moved on. And it destroyed her insides. She sat on the floor, holding the paper as if it were a piece of herself. She cried until she lost her voice. She realized, with brutal clarity, that no forgiveness could mend what was broken. That time would not heal what was shattered by the choices she made. That his love, once broken, would never be the same again. The letter became a mirror of everything she had lost: love, respect, home, peace. For the first time, Emily understood the true weight of regret. It is not remorse for what one has done, but the knowledge that what was lost will never be returned. On the other side, Michael remained silent. As he returned the letter, he felt an unexpected lightness. It wasn't joy, nor triumph, just tranquility. The pain had run its course, and now all that remained was peace. He looked out the window that night and realized he could finally breathe without the bitter taste of memory. Beside him, his new wife slept peacefully, her head resting on his chest. And he, for the first time in a long time, felt whole again. He understood that forgiveness is not a return, but a liberation. We forgive not to return, but to move on. And he had. As Emily stared at the returned letter, Michael was already planning a trip. Not to escape, but to celebrate the newness that was beginning to blossom within him. She, however, would remain there, surrounded by the walls she'd built with her own choices, mentally reviewing everything that could have been different. And perhaps this was the true punishment, knowing that he'd not only forgiven her, but that, in doing so, he'd freed himself from her completely. Her love, now, existed only in the past, a past he'd chosen not to revisit. And somewhere between pain and forgiveness, they both understood, in opposite ways, the same lesson: respect is the foundation of everything, and when it's lost, nothing can sustain love. Time followed its course unhurriedly, as it does with everything that needs to heal silently. The pain, however excruciating, gave way to acceptance. What had once been an open wound became merely a discreet mark, no longer bleeding. Michael had built, with effort and patience, a new life, where love was no longer an ancient broken promise, but a living, breathing gift. The woman who now shared his days with him didn't try to heal what had been broken, but offered something completely new, a love without ruins. They cultivated a story together without ghosts, without demands, with the lightness of someone who has already understood the weight of carrying what didn't work out. And it was with her that Michael discovered it was possible to be happy again, not because he had won a battle, but because he had chosen not to live eternally at war. With it came new experiences, new paths, and even a deeper beginning, a new home, in a new city, far from the scenes marked by the past. He rebuilt, with his feet firmly planted in the present, without the urge to forget, but with the wisdom to not hold on. Trust gradually returned, cultivated through small gestures, simple routines, and sincere conversations. And what was born there was not a love that replaced another, but a love reborn from pain, more conscious, more serene, more mature. He allowed himself to live, no longer as someone surviving the rubble of a broken heart, but as someone who chose not to carry debris into new homes. The man who once had his world crumble before a crowd now smiled lightly as he silently prepared breakfast alongside those who knew the value of loyalty. Meanwhile, Emily experienced a different kind of silence. Not a light silence, but one that weighs like concrete. The days, once filled with stimulation, became too long. Friends drifted away, not out of malice, but because stories change, roles reverse, and not everyone knows how to act around someone who was once the center and is now the shadow. She tried to keep up appearances, as if she were still that confident, desired, admired woman, but there was something in her gaze that betrayed the emptiness she carried within. Casual encounters with acquaintances became uncomfortable, family lunches became punctuated by awkward silences, and the mirror, once her ally, began to reflect something she didn't want to see, regret. She tried new relationships, yes. But none of them prospered. She would start them with false enthusiasm and end with genuine frustration. It was as if there were an invisible layer between her and any attempt at a new beginning, a kind of moral barrier no one could cross. The men she met didn't see her as someone to be loved, but as someone to be deciphered. She, in turn, could no longer trust in anyone. Not even herself. And perhaps this was the cruelest punishment, realizing that the mistake she made wasn't just the loss of a man, but the loss of her own peace. Her mind betrayed her more than anyone ever could. At night, she lay in deafening silence, remembering the gentle touch of someone who had once loved her so pure it seemed like a lie. And understanding that she would never have that back was like drinking poison in daily doses. One day, walking through the streets of the old neighborhood where they had lived together, she saw him from afar, crossing the sidewalk with his new wife at his side and a child in his arms. He was laughing, a light, carefree laugh she hadn't seen in years. He didn't see her, and if he did, he didn't show it. He passed her by as if she were just another face in the crowd. And that hurt more than any words spoken. Because there, in that second, she understood that she was no longer a part of his life, not as a fond memory, nor as an ugly scar. It was just the past. A past he chose not to carry. And it destroyed her in a new way, more mature, more silent, but equally cruel. Life sometimes doesn't provide clear answers, only consequences. And it was by experiencing these consequences that Emily understood that some choices cannot be undone, and some loves that, once lost, never return. She tried to rebuild ties with those she still had, sought therapy, tried to reinvent herself in 1,000 ways, but regret shadowed her. There were good days, of course. Days when she could breathe without feeling the weight of loss. But even then, all it took was one detail, a song, a smell, an old photograph, for the world to crumble again. Life went on, but the past wouldn't let her go. Michael, on the other hand, had made peace with everything. He held on to Emily's memory like one would a book they've already read, fondly, but with no intention of opening it again. The pain that had once nearly crushed him was now just history. He loved again. Not the same, not more, not less. Different. And perhaps that was the most beautiful thing. Because true love, when it ends, leaves room for something new, if the heart is clean. And his was. He didn't just forgive. He moved on. And the difference between the two was this: he had learned from the pain. She simply felt it. If you've made it this far, now I want to know, what did you think of this story? Do you believe there's a way back after betrayal? Comment below with your opinion, it's very important. And of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell so you don't miss any new stories. This story is a reminder that betrayal doesn't just destroy relationships, it uproots everything that was cultivated with love, respect, and trust. That it destroys self-love, mutual admiration, and turns what was once a home into emotional ruins. Here on the channel, we don't condone any kind of betrayal. On the contrary, we're here to show, through stories like this, that fidelity isn't about perfection, it's about choice. And that, in the end, every choice has a price. Some are light. Others, leave scars that never fade.